Hello, Jen here with another layout for the Wild Whisper Designs team. I am doing a sunburst layout today. So I have the basic concept for the design. I'm going to use a mixture of pattern papers and a few other elements to try and bring this sunburst together. So I'm going to start with the pattern papers because I know that they are the basis of the sunburst. They're the easiest part. And I'm just freehanding them. I am not measuring. You can see my very technical means of, trying to roughly find the center of the page. I know that that center is going to be covered up, so it doesn't matter if the papers overlap a little bit there or fall a little short or anything like that. My picture's going to go right in that center. So I'm just cutting them. I want this to look very casual. I mean, that's my style, right? So I'm not going to do a lot of measuring, and I knew with the other media that I'm choosing to do that it would be a little bit harder to make that perfect because I'm using some round elements and some messy elements. So I decided to make the whole layout look purposefully casual. You could definitely do this same thing and take the time to measure everything, have all of the areas of the sunburst exactly the same sizes or however you want to measure it out. And if that's the case, then I just say make sure you take the time to put every element in the perfect position, because when you measure things and everything looks really straight, if you have one element that's sort of out of place, that's where your eye is going to fall. And I knew for me that my sewing was going to be a bit of a problem because it's my first time using the machine that I have and trying to sew on a diagonal and stuff. I knew I wasn't going to be able to get that perfect. And I also want to do a little bit of smushing with some colors. And I have the stamping here, and I'm going to have some sequins. I just had a lot of elements, so I went for the purposefully messy, loose, casual look. And here I'm just using some Tim Holtz Distress inks, the same ones I've been using the whole time. I find that they look really good with this collection. I love stamping on white backgrounds with them because they're just so bright and vibrant and they really pop off the page. So I picked the stamp set from, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. The stamp set from the Adventures collection, which is sort of a companion collection to this one, or I guess that one is the original. This is more Adventures, but they work perfectly together, and I really love the tree. What is that called? The tree rings, I guess. Yeah, they match the other papers. Like that one there, the mint and navy one. So I decided to pull that out and use that for my stamped element. And now I'm just trying to decide where I want the rest of my elements to go. So I know that I want to have some sort of watercolor technique, so I'm going to do it up in this corner here. And I am using washi tape, so I know that kind of goes against the whole loose concept, but I'm not really measuring it. You could see there I was just marking with a pen where I sort of wanted it to go. And the main reason there is just because when you cut the paper, you have this sort of straight line that defines the ray of your sunburst, and I wanted to make sure that the other elements sort of fell into their defined area as well, so that there are gaps between all of the rays, and you can really see that that was the design look I was going for. So here I'm just using those same colors from Tim Holtz, and at first I sprayed the paper. This is the Whisper, what's it called? I can't remember what's it called. Whisper White, there you go, from Stampin' Up. So it does take water okay. It warps a little bit. It sort of has a core to it. It's not a solid piece. So the top has this really almost glossy finish to it. So you can see that the watercolors kind of sit on top. And when I sprayed the paper itself, it had little pools of color. So with my paintbrush, I was just popping color into those pools. And then now that I had my sort of base coat, I can go back in and fill in the gaps with the smushing technique. And in between, I did let it dry a little bit. I didn't want to be smushing pools of color into wet pools of color. I didn't want to have them mixed. I wanted the colors to sort of maintain their integrity. Is that the right word? I don't know. It sounds good, so that's what I'm going to say. And I'm just using some pop dots to put these triangles down. It gives them just a little bit of dimension, not too much, just enough that there's a bit of a shadow, and they're just slightly higher than the elements around them. And now for this triangle down in the bottom, I'm going to use some random wood veneer hearts. I just take all of my wood veneer hearts that I get from whatever collections and put them all together. So I started with the biggest ones, and now I can fill in the gaps with smaller ones. And some of them are perfect heart shapes and some of them are kind of wonky. I think they've come from places like Studio Calico and stuff like that. And I just like that the wood sort of, it gives this feel to the collection, which is a very outdoorsy adventure collection, so the wood complements it really well. But it also gives a space for your eye to kind of rest because there's no color there. It's very neutral, and I just love the way that they look. They came together really well. So now I can put down my last big triangle up at the top. And in hindsight, I probably would have changed these triangles. At the time that I cut them, I thought that I was going to have sequins in between the wolf paper and the chevron paper. And then also sequins down in the bottom, which you'll see me doing in a second. Here you can see I'm just trying to pull out colors that match, so I'm just popping them on top of other colors in the collection to see how good of a match they are. And I think I do an okay job of finding the right colors. You can also see I took the layout to my sewing machine and went ahead and sewed 2 triangles there. It's a brand new machine to me and I haven't sewed in a very long time. So I didn't want to do that on camera because it was a huge mess. I think it worked out okay in the end. And this is one of the reasons why I didn't measure or do anything too perfectly, because I knew my lines weren't going to be very good with this. It's going to take a lot more practice before I can start sewing really straight lines on these weird diagonals. But in any case, I think it turned out okay. So as you can see, I did the sequins down in the bottom and it just took such a long time. I love the way it looks, but it did take a really long time. So in that top corner, instead of doing more sequins, I ended up putting washi tape. And what I was saying before about hindsight is that had I known I was going to use the washi tape, I probably would have switched the corners. I would have done the washi down below and I would have done the sequins up top, or I maybe would have changed some of the pattern papers there where I put them, because that top corner is quite heavy. There's a lot of solid color up there, whereas the bottom corner, its sort of complementary corner, is very light and airy and mostly white. But I still like it, and obviously I'm not going to take it all apart and redo it again, but if you guys were ever planning to do this same sort of layout, just keep that in mind where you kind of have your biggest concentrations of color. So now I've pulled out a Fancy Pants 6x6 pad, actually 2 of them, but they both sort of had similar colors, and I just wanted to have some colors that matched the collection in bold, like a bold color. I didn't want any patterns, so I could back my picture, which again you can see my picture is in the snow and it's a lot of white too, so I wanted to make sure that there were some layers behind it in those bold colors so that it really stood off the page properly. And there you go. I am going to take some fun foam so that I can give it a little bit of extra dimension. Again, just giving it a bit of a helping hand to stand off the page, because even though I did all this work in the background, that is the background. The picture is the main element, and so I want to make sure that that is what everybody is noticing first. It's hard not to because I put it right in the middle of the page, but you know, there's so many details and interesting things to see that you want to make sure that you're always coming back to that picture. And now I won't do much embellishing, but I really like this card that said "Find Your Wild." And then I love this sort of signpost card. Oh, Evie keeps coming to visit me. Excuse me. So I want to use the two of them sort of as maybe a title, but also just a little bit of decoration. Because even though I have so much going on in the background, I love to embellish, so I wanted to be able to do that. So I fussy cut them, and then that way I didn't have these big blocky elements to try and work with. And now, because I'm putting that Find Your Wild right near the triangle that is the matching color, I wanted to make sure that it really stood apart from that triangle, and so I'm going to put a couple of little banners in that navy blue. That's sort of that constellation pattern, and then that striped pattern as well. And it just really helps to give that Find Your Wild a nice place to sort of ground itself, and also make sure that you're looking at that and it's not fading into the triangle behind it. And then I'll put the signpost down below, and it just says things like mountains and climb and adventure and wild. And we're not actually in the mountains to do this tobogganing, but we do often go up to the mountains to toboggan. So I thought that it would work. And this is my layout. I love the way it turned out. It was so much fun to make. I love all of the different elements and how sparkly and interesting it is. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And if you have any questions, leave them for me down below. And check out Wild Whisper Designs so you can grab your own more adventurous collection. Until next time, happy scrapping, everybody. Bye!